Sagittarius, the sacred return. You're no longer searching, you're awakening. What if I told you that what you've been looking for is no longer out there? Sagittarius, you've spent years chasing light across distant skies, searching for meaning in movement, purpose in people, and belonging in places that never quite held you. You've asked questions no one could answer, placed your heart in hands that didn't understand its language, and believed that maybe, just maybe, if you ran far enough or tried hard enough, you'd finally arrive. But something in you is shifting now. You're not tired, you're awakening. The old hunger to seek no longer satisfies. And for the first time, silence feels more like a beginning than an end. This isn't about giving up. It's about coming back. To the version of you that isn't shaped by longing but by knowing. To the self that doesn't perform to be loved, but radiates love simply by existing. You are no longer asking, "Where do I belong?" You are remembering, "I am the place I've always longed to return to." This is your sacred return. And it begins here. Welcome to Zodiac Wisdom, where I, Sophia, walk with you through the emotional, spiritual, and astrological gateways of your life. If something inside you stirred as you listened, stay. Like this video if it touched a part of you you've forgotten. Share it with someone else who's been searching. And subscribe, because what's coming next will meet you exactly where your soul has already arrived. Gate 1. When the search no longer satisfies. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when the thrill of the search begins to fade. Sagittarius, you know that moment. You felt it rising quietly within you. An ache not from lack but from knowing. The books you once devoured with urgency now feel like echoes of truths you've already lived. The conversations that once lit you up now drift like smoke, leaving you strangely untouched. The places that once stirred your soul begin to feel like repeating landscapes. First, you wonder if you're just tired. Maybe you need a break, another destination, a new voice to inspire you. But then it hits you, it's not fatigue. It's transformation. What once fed you no longer fits you. This is not failure. This is not the end of your passion or curiosity. This is a sacred sign. You are shedding an old layer of seeking. A pattern driven not by wonder, but by the belief that what you need is always outside of you. You are being invited to cross a different kind of threshold. One where fulfillment doesn't come from more, but from deeper. You've outgrown the thrill of the chase. Now you are craving stillness, not as stagnation but as alignment. It's confusing, isn't it? For so long, the act of seeking made you feel alive. You built your identity around the pursuit of knowledge, freedom, adventure, love. And yet here you are, standing in front of something quieter and far more unnerving. The realization that your soul is no longer impressed by motion for motion's sake. You are no longer chasing the next answer. You are listening for the answer that lives in your breath. I once worked with a Sagittarius client named Leon. He was a successful entrepreneur, a voracious learner, constantly signing up for the next seminar, the next certification, the next journey across the globe. He told me, "I feel like I should be excited, but every new thing feels like a repetition of something I've already done. I keep moving, but I don't feel moved." What he was experiencing was not burnout. It was the quiet call of his inner life asking for something more honest than novelty. He didn't need another mountain. He needed to stop and finally see the view he had already climbed to. This stage of your evolution can feel disorienting. You've been conditioned to believe that progress means forward motion. But true awakening often begins with stillness. With a sudden clarity that the joy you're seeking won't be found in accumulation, but in presence. This is the mountaintop moment where you realize the view isn't in the distance. It's here. It's always been here. And yet, this moment can also feel hollow. You might feel guilty for not feeling grateful, ashamed that you have so much and still feel unsatisfied. But let me tell you something with gentleness and truth. It is not ingratitude, it is evolution. When your soul has touched deeper truths, surface-level pursuits lose their flavor. You're not broken. You're ripening. You might also feel the pull to run, to find a new project, a new person, a new path that reignites the spark. But Sagittarius, what if that spark is no longer meant to come from outside? What if your fire now wants to be tended differently? Not through friction but through stillness. Not through longing but through listening? Can you sit in the space between what used to excite you and what is yet to be born? Can you be faithful to the quiet? This is where many seekers get lost. They confuse this sacred pause for apathy. They try to force a new goal, fabricate excitement, convince themselves that they still care about what they used to chase. But deep down, you know you've changed. The horizon no longer holds what it used to. The next big thing doesn't stir your bones the way it once did. And you're beginning to understand. The journey now is not outward, it's inward. This is not about abandoning your passion. This is about anchoring it. The fire within you has always been real, but now it's asking to be contained, focused, integrated. You are not meant to dim. You are meant to root, to stop scattering your light in every direction, and learn how to let it warm the space within. There's a moment every seeker must face when they realize that the path forward is not another road, but a return. A return to the self before the seeking began. A return to the part of you that was never lost, just buried beneath all the striving, all the chasing, all the proving. And so, Sagittarius, if what once thrilled you now feels thin, trust that. If your heart no longer leaps at things that once consumed you, don't fight it. This is not a crisis of purpose. This is a deep inner homecoming. This is your soul choosing depth over distraction. This is you remembering that wholeness was never the prize at the end of the path. It was the ground you were walking on all along. Gate 2, when the old shell begins to fall away. Sagittarius, it starts quietly. A discomfort you can't name. A sense of tightness in places that once felt like home. The roles you played so well, bright soul, generous giver, wise wanderer, suddenly feel like costumes that no longer fit your skin. And even though those roles once protected you, gave you belonging, even identity, something inside you knows, it's time to shed. Letting go of these layers isn't easy, because they were never just performances. They were survival. The smile you wore to keep peace, the advice you gave to be needed, the fire you carried to prove you were strong. These were your shields. They helped you navigate a world that often demanded you be less tender, less questioning, less true. But now, those very shields are keeping you from something greater. From yourself. From love that doesn't require translation. From freedom that doesn't come with a performance clause. You feel it, don't you? The quiet urge to stop explaining. The pull to say less but mean more. The tiredness that creeps in when you're around people who can't feel the real you beneath your words. The ache of recognizing that you've outgrown the conversations, the masks, the spaces that once defined you. It's like shedding skin. Like a snake rubbing itself against rough stone. Knowing the process will sting, but trusting that the new layer beneath will breathe easier. You might find yourself resisting. Telling yourself it's safer to keep the old stories alive. That it's selfish to change when others expect you to stay the same. But Sagittarius, you were not born to stay the same. You were born to evolve radically, truthfully, and unapologetically. I once guided a Sagittarius woman named Elodie through this very passage. She was the heart of every room, always radiant, always giving. But in our sessions, she whispered, "I feel invisible inside the person everyone loves." Her laughter had become armor. Her generosity a way to avoid being seen too deeply. And when she began to remove those layers, not dramatically but softly, she felt raw at first. Exposed. Alone. But then came the moment she stood in silence with someone and didn't rush to fill it. The moment she cried and didn't apologize. The moment she stopped shining to be liked and started resting to be real. That was when the true connection she longed for finally arrived. Not because she was fixed, but because she was authentic. You may find that as your old shell breaks, parts of your life begin to crack too. Relationships built on the version of you that no longer exists may start to fade. Habits you once found comforting now feel heavy. That's not you falling apart. That's you becoming more honest. Shedding is not destruction. It is revelation. But yes, it's tender. You'll grieve versions of yourself that once carried you through hard seasons. You'll miss the ease of slipping into roles that got applause. You'll second-guess your right to change when others liked you the way you were. But remember this. If you have to keep performing to be loved, it isn't love, it's approval. And your soul is asking for something deeper. Letting go of your old identity doesn't mean abandoning your fire. It means letting your fire burn more truly. Not for show, not to convince, not to attract, but simply to warm the space within and around you. There's a new kind of radiance coming from you now. One that isn't loud but unmistakable. One that doesn't seek attention, but invites resonance. You may feel strange in this in-between space, not who you used to be, not yet who you're becoming. This liminal zone can feel lonely, even frightening, but it is also where the magic lives, where you discover not just who you are, but who you've always been beneath the noise. This is where your soul stretches its arms and breathes. So let the old layers fall, Sagittarius. Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in reverence. Thank them for their service. They helped you survive. But now it's time to thrive. It's time to walk forward, not armored, but alive. And when the new skin feels too fresh, too exposed, too different, trust that it was always yours. You're not becoming someone else. You're simply returning to the someone you were before the world told you to be more palatable. This is how true strength reveals itself. Not in holding it all together, but in letting yourself fall apart just enough to be real. Gate 3. When silence becomes your companion. There was a time, Sagittarius, when silence made you restless. It felt like absence, like space waiting to be filled. You searched for noise, not just external sound, but activity, momentum, the next question, the next horizon. Movement was comfort. Stillness a kind of threat. Because in stillness you heard things, your own fears, your forgotten needs, the ache of truths you didn't yet know how to name. So you ran beautifully, bravely, and for a long time purposefully. But something has shifted. Now silence doesn't feel like a void. Feels like a presence. Not the absence of connection, but the doorway to it. You've begun to notice how the quiet holds you. Not to isolate you, but to reveal you. To strip away the noise that never belonged to you. To let your soul speak in its original language, soft, subtle, eternal. This new friendship with silence is not passive. It is alive. It is the moment before dawn when the sky turns indigo, and you feel the world breathing. It is the sip of warm tea where everything pauses for just a second, and in that pause you feel yourself, truly feel yourself for the first time all day. It is the soft rustle of your own thoughts finding form without needing an audience. And slowly, the panic you once felt in solitude dissolves into reverence. One of my Sagittarius clients, a filmmaker named Juno, told me, "For years I thought I needed noise to feel inspired, music blasting, people talking, plans stacking. But now I crave mornings where I don't speak for hours. That's when my clarity comes." And I knew exactly what she meant. Because silence, when you stop fearing it, doesn't take anything from you. It gives you back to yourself. In silence, your intuition grows louder. You begin to distinguish between the voice of your ego and the whisper of your soul. You no longer mistake urgency for truth. You no longer jump at every opportunity out of fear of missing out. You start asking different questions, not, "What should I do next?" but, "What feels true right now?" And these questions don't shout. They hum. They rise like mist. They settle like dew on the edges of your awareness. And in this space, the most sacred answers often arrive. Sagittarius, you are ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, wisdom, and divine knowing. And yet, even Jupiter needs silence to hear the stars. Expansion doesn't always mean more. Sometimes it means deeper. Sometimes the universe expands inward. This is a holy turning point for you. Your energy is no longer being scattered in all directions. It's beginning to gather. Not to retreat, but to root. Not to disappear, but to become intentional. Your fire still burns, but now it burns in stillness. Like a candle in a quiet sanctuary. Like a hearth that warms without demanding attention. This is where your real power lives now, not in movement, but in presence. Of course, not everyone will understand this shift. Some may think you're withdrawing. Others may ask what's wrong. But nothing is wrong. You're not shrinking, you're anchoring. And those who can meet you in this quiet will become the truest companions of your next chapter. Because real connection isn't built in constant conversation. It's built in shared stillness. In being able to sit with someone in silence and feel more seen than hours of words could ever offer. You used to look for signs outside of you. Now you recognize the signs that rise from within. A softening of your body around a certain person. A calm that settles over you in certain spaces. A sudden clarity when you're doing absolutely nothing. This is divine guidance. This is what the noise used to drown out. So if your days have become quieter, trust it. If your nights are more reflective, lean in. If you find yourself savoring the smallest rituals, lighting a candle, sitting in sunlight, hearing your breath, know that you are not regressing. You are remembering. You are stepping into the sacred dimension of your own life. where meaning is no longer loud but holy. And no, this doesn't mean you'll never crave adventure again. You are still Sagittarius after all, the explorer, the fire walker. But now your compass is internal. You don't need to go anywhere to arrive. You don't need to move to feel alive. You've learned that the most beautiful journey is not always towards something, but within. And the destination? Presence. Gate 4. When you learn to receive, not just give. Sagittarius, you've always been the giver. The light bringer. The one who listens without interrupting. Who shows up even when your own heart is breaking. Who pours and pours, because somewhere deep inside, giving felt safer than receiving. Giving made you feel useful. Giving gave you a role. But now the fire that once fueled your generosity flickers low. Not from lack of love, but from lack of rest. And the truth begins to surface, quietly but undeniably. It's time to receive. This isn't a punishment. It's a rebalancing. The universe, in its deep intelligence, is calling you to shift. Because if you only ever give, you miss the sacred intimacy of being held. If you only ever offer, you forget how to open. You've been the well, Sagittarius, deep, abundant, and always flowing. But even the deepest wells need rain. Receiving can feel foreign at first, vulnerable, even selfish. You might notice yourself shrinking when someone offers help, minimizing your own needs, laughing off compliments, saying, "I'm fine," when you're anything but. Because somewhere along the way, you equated receiving with weakness. You feared that needing something made you less. But it doesn't. It makes you human. And more than that, it makes you available to true connection. You were never meant to be the only source of light. You are allowed to rest in someone else's glow. You are allowed to exhale and let another hold space for you. I once worked with a Sagittarius healer named Mara. For years, she supported hundreds of others, clients, friends, family. But she came to me burnt out, barely breathing. Her eyes filled with tears when I asked, "Who holds you?" That question cracked something open. Slowly, she began to let others in. Not just in crisis, but in joy. She let herself be seen not as the strong one, but as a full human, soft, messy, brilliant, tired, radiant. And what she found wasn't pity. It was presence. Love that met her not because she gave, but simply because she was. Sagittarius, you do not have to earn rest. You do not have to earn love. You do not have to shine every moment to be worthy of warmth. There are people, energies, even moments in time that are waiting, aching to give to you. Not because you've done enough, but because you are enough. But to receive them, you must soften. You must be willing to sit with the discomfort of letting someone care. Letting life care. Letting yourself care enough to stop carrying it all alone. And that's not passive, it's brave. To receive is to say, "I am open." It is to trust that you will not lose your power by being held. That your fire will not dim because someone else adds wood to your flame. That allowing love in does not make you dependent, it makes you whole. You may find that as you begin to receive, the quality of your relationship shifts. Those who only knew how to take may fall away. Those who have been waiting to give, waiting to love you more deeply will step forward. And most importantly, you will begin to love yourself differently. You will begin to meet your own needs with the same devotion you once reserved for others. Imagine for a moment a fire that has burned alone for a long time. Still alive, still warm but flickering. Now imagine someone kneeling beside it, not to smother it, not to take its place, but to gently place another log into the flames. The fire grows, not because it was lacking but because it was loved. That, Sagittarius, is what this chapter invites you into. A sacred expansion not through effort, but through openness. Not through action but through allowing. You are not selfish for needing rest. You are not weak for desiring softness. You are not broken for wanting to be held. You are ready. Ready to receive the same depth, devotion, and tenderness you've so freely given. Not as a reward but as a birthright. So open your hands. Soften your shoulders. Say yes when love offers to carry something with you. Let yourself be fed, listened to, supported. This is not the end of your giving. It is the evolution of it. Because a Sagittarius who knows how to receive becomes a light that doesn't just burn, but endures. Conclusion: the sacred return. Sagittarius, you are no longer the one running toward the horizon with empty hands, begging for answers. You are no longer the flame that burns only when someone else believes in your light. You are no longer the soul who thinks love must be earned through effort, or that belonging is a reward for fitting in. You've changed, not in the way the world measures change, but in the way your soul knows it. Quietly, deeply, truthfully, you've walked through a holy undoing. You've felt the weight of masks fall away. You've sat in the stillness you used to fear and found it speaking in your own voice. You've begun to realize that the deepest fulfillment was never in the next answer, the next place, the next person, but in the quiet return to yourself. And now here you are. Not complete, in the way that means nothing more will change, but complete in the sense that you no longer believe you're broken. You are soft and powerful, open and grounded, willing to receive, willing to be seen, willing to stay. Not because you've lost your fire, but because you've learned how to tend it in peace. This sacred return is not about isolation. It is about integration. You are not here to retreat from life. You're here to live it more fully, with your whole self finally present. With love that feels safe. With silence that feels full. With connection that doesn't ask you to shrink. And because you've come home to yourself, the world can now meet you in ways it never could before. Not because it's changed, but because you have. So breathe, Sagittarius. Let the quiet surround you like a gentle blessing. Let the new kind of love find you, not the kind you chase, but the kind that sees you and stays. Let yourself be held not for what you give, but for who you are. You don't have to search anymore. You've arrived. And the universe has been waiting to welcome you home. If this journey spoke to a quiet truth inside you, I invite you to stay with me here at Zodiac Wisdom. I'm Sophia, and this space is where soul meets stars. Like this video if it resonated with your heart, share it with someone who might need to remember their own return, and subscribe for more gentle awakenings, sacred reminders, and emotional astrology to guide you through every season of your becoming. You are not alone. You are not behind. You are not broken. You're awakening. And that, dear Sagittarius, changes everything.